Jeff Bezos, he's controlling media via Washington Post. If you were to look at Mukesh Ambani, he is controlling media in some way or the other via Network 18 and via.
Have you ever wondered who has more power? A management consultant / partner in McKinsey, BCG or Bain, or an IAS officer or an IPS officer? Or have you ever wondered who makes more wealth? A government sector IAS or an IPS officer, or a management consultant or product management here in San Francisco or in India as well? Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Shatakshi, and on my channel I talk about, whenever I'm on a chai break, about management consulting, MBA, many a times career advice, especially in your early years. So feel free to hit on the subscribe and the notification button so that you are notified whenever I'm bringing out interesting content, as I've spent last 10 years working in management consulting and strategy, and I periodically shoot these videos for all of you for your own learning and development. Very excited. I'm right now in Mexico. So if you want me to make a separate video about my life here in Mexico as well, more than happy to make this video also for you. This particular episode is very special because I'm going to be collaborating with Naman Shrivastava. Naman is another co-founder of Global Governance Initiative, an education venture that I co-lead with him. And he has worked with Government of India. He's also worked with United Nations, and he's going to be advising Eastern European governments as well. So pretty exciting to have him on this episode. And he brings in a lot of interesting perspective on the topic of today, which is government versus private sector.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
So Naman, very excited to have you on this episode today. And it's very meaningful because we have been working together since quite some time now. Would love to hear your initial words as we kickstart this episode on government versus private sector. Over to you.
First and foremost, thank you so much, Shatakshi, for inviting me on your channel. And I look forward to having a meaningful discussion on this extremely important topic. So, unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of tea. So I will be having Nibu Pani. I love lassi, but I'll go away in this case with Nibu Pani. In any case, look forward to an engaging discussion.
Perfect. We are shifting the mics here today because technical logistics, but I really hope that the audio is clear for all of you. So Naman, I have largely 5 interesting questions when it comes to a conundrum between government and private sector. A youngster in his or her 20s or even early 30s could have this conundrum whether I should be working in private sector or whether I should be working in government sector. My first question to you is pretty interesting, and it goes back to probably your 20s, early 20s. If you were to go back to your 20s and if you had to make 2 choices between working for government and you have cleared multiple stages for UPSC, you reached till the final interview round for UPSC, or whether you were to become a management consultant at McKinsey, BCG or Bain, which path were you to choose if you were given another choice to go back in your early 20s? So that's my question number 1 for you.
It's a very interesting question. And a few years ago, I think this was at St. Stephen's, your college, where one of the students asked me a similar question, and this brings back those memories. So I think in life, reference points are of incredible importance. So, and by reference points, I mean, where did you grow up, or what did your family do? So on and so forth. So I was born in a tier 3 city in the central part of India, Madhya Pradesh, and my parents were from the middle class family. So if I were to go back to my 20s, I would undoubtedly pick UPSC over any other job, primarily because for middle class families in India, it is definitely a life-defining exam. If you can clear this exam, your generations can in some cases change and transform. So civil services is undoubtedly one of those asymmetric bets in life that millions of Indians will take, and I would have taken the same. One key thing about civil services is that if you can clear this exam in your early 20s, you will be managing districts of the size of European countries. You can be part of diplomatic missions across the globe in very early stage of your career. So the kind of exposure that you can get while being in the services is going to be tremendous. Having said this, because you asked this such tailored question, my goal would be to clear this exam in the first go. And when I'm preparing for this exam, I will also keep in mind that I should have a relevant plan B as I'm pursuing my pursuit to be in civil services. Because many of the youngsters I meet today, they have in a way ruined their life preparing and appearing and reappearing for the same exam. Because the way this exam is designed is such that you end up wasting multiple years revising the same things. And this can be of tremendous fallout for someone who is very young. So I would prepare for the exam to answer your question, but I will definitely have a plan B. So if for some reason things do not go the way I wish to make it work, I will pivot and do something different in my life. What about you? What do you think? You've been on the side of management consulting. You've worked with the chairman of McKinsey. You have worked with in BCG and have also advised governments across the globe. And if I were to ask you the same question, what would be your answer here?
Sure. I really like your perspective on this question that a middle class youngster should prepare for civil services, at least give one attempt. I think that's a very noble objective, and I have always stood for creating an impact in the society at large. So everyone knows this, and I've always maintained this very blatantly on my channel that I was very clear that I didn't want to spend a lot of energy and time preparing for an exam that would have taken years out of my life. And I was able to take such a very clear step because I am an output of St. Stephen's College, which brings plethora of opportunities for you, at least at an undergrad level when you're getting a job. But I really understand that not a lot of people may be as privileged or as great, as lucky as I got with my undergrad, right? So if I were to go back and if I were still in St. Stephen's College or if I were in IIT Delhi, and if I have opportunities to create an impact in the society, either through entrepreneurship or through advising governments, through taking a lateral route, I would still do the same without the blink of an eye. Having said this, if unfortunately I do not come from a background where at an undergrad level or even at a mid-career, mid-20s level, I don't have that opportunity for me, then I would take the route of civil services. It's a risk, but you are taking that risk because unfortunately you do not have opportunities that are surrounding you. So the short answer is, without the blink of an eye, I would choose management consulting. I started my career as a boutique management consultant, and then of course after years I chose to do BCG. I made a separate video how I failed to crack BCG first and then got BCG. So somewhere on my channel you will be able to find that video out. So yeah, that's my response, which brings me towards the second question, which is largely around work satisfaction, Naman. Once again, you've been on the side of private sector and public sector before. As private sector, I would largely categorize your work with, let's say, UN. It's not really private sector as such. It's a multilateral organization. But you've worked directly with governments and you've worked with multilateral organizations. Where do you think that you had a better work satisfaction? And before Naman gives the answer, I want all of you, if you have more questions over and above the questions that I'm going to ask Naman in this video, feel free to put it in the chat. If we have more time, then perhaps we can collab further with Naman, and stay tuned till the end if you want to know the answer on who earns more between the conundrum of private sector and public sector. But coming back, Naman, who has a higher work satisfaction between private sector and government sector?
It's a phenomenal question. And I think, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to witness bureaucrats with close proximity across the world, not just in India. And based on my experiences, I've realized that there are IAS officers, there are IFS officers who are incredibly dissatisfied with their work. And at the same time, there are IAS officers and IFS officers who are very satisfied with the work that they've been doing. So it all boils down to this philosophy that I think Mahatma Gandhi used to talk about, that whatever you think is what you say, is what you do. So if anything that you do in life is in direct relation with what you think and what you say, you will be satisfied. It can happen in entrepreneurship, it can happen in civil services, it can be in your wonderful job that you might do in venture capital or private equity or in management consulting. So I think it's a very person-specific answer. Personally speaking, I had a wonderful time in the UN. The food in New York was delicious, so I loved it. I had an incredibly good time in New Delhi. Again, the food in Old Delhi was wonderful. So for me, I think I had a good time working across governments, and I was very satisfied in terms of learning, in terms of growth prospects. I was very satisfied in terms of the kind of people that I met along the journey. So it's a very person-specific answer, and each will define their own journey. And I hope whosoever is watching this video have this perspective in mind if and when they decide to join the bureaucracy or the private sector. It's entirely up to you on how you define your growth. I hope this answers your question. If I were to put this same question to you, because you have also worked with the leaders such as Tony Blair in the UK, you have also worked with top echelons in the management consulting. If I were to ask you this question in terms of work satisfaction, what would be your answer here?
I really liked your perspective around personalized answers. I do agree that's really true because you define your own journey. You could be working in an ecosystem where everyone is really enjoying their work and is having a good time, but you are not the one who's having a good time. For me, I've been pretty clear. I've always found more work satisfaction when I've spent time working in social impact and public policy. And that's primarily the reason why we both joined hands to run a social impact education venture, because I derive a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of good sleep at the end of the day when I work in social impact / government sector. So, and the reason I think is when you're working really hard, when you're working 14, 15 hours every day, if at the end of the day you feel that your work is going to create better life for someone else on the ground or directly or indirectly, then you convince your mind that it's all worth it. The grind is worth it. Waking up early hours is worth it. Getting stuck in the traffic jam is worth it, and whatnot. And that seemed to be the case with me when I worked with Government of India, when I was working in international affairs in Dubai on multiple issues such as extremism. Then I tended to have a better work satisfaction because I found more meaning into the work. That is not to say that my time at BCG or that my time at Groupon, now called Nearby, was not high on work satisfaction. There was, but I am someone who personally derives a lot of happiness to do things that have a social impact association to them. So that's my answer. Which brings us towards the third, and we are now spicing up topics a little bit, which is largely around power. So a lot of people in India, and I think rightfully so, who come from middle class or lower middle class background, they want to acquire power, right? And rightfully so, any ambitious person would want to become more power. And as someone who has studied power in Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, a school that we both share, I of course did my exchange semester. Naman is an alum. I studied power, that power could have multiple facets, multiple meanings. But if we were to have a short, quick chat about government versus private sector, who gets more power? What would be your answer, Naman?
That's again a great question, and I would want the audience to think here. So if you were to pick one name or one person or one entity who is the most powerful person or government in the world, what would be your answer? Pause for like 2 seconds or 5 seconds and comment below with the answer, and then I'll give you my answer. I hope the pausing has worked in any case. So I think if I were to look today in terms of who is the most powerful person or organization, I would pitch people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Mukesh Ambani in that list of powerful people over Joe Biden and the Prime Minister of Ukraine or President of Ghana or Uganda. The reason is simple, because if you have to look at these people, be it Jeff Bezos, he's controlling media via Washington Post. If you have to look at Mukesh Ambani, he is controlling media in some way or the other via Network 18 and via his tremendous outreach and penetration through Geo. If you were to look at Elon Musk, in some way or the other, he's trying to control the media. And Mark Zuckerberg and Sundar Pichai, these are the powerful people, because in today's day and age, information is important. And this information is being controlled by certain very powerful people. And whosoever is controlling that information is powerful. I can't say the same for the government, because government in some way or the other are reliant. They rely on these people. So the definition of power is transforming, it's changing. Back in the socialist era, bureaucrats used to control the media in India. That has changed now. With more people having access to YouTube, having more access to social media, having more access to information and their rights, the definition of power is now shifting from those who were implementing those rules to those who are now the beneficiaries of the rules. So citizens are getting more power, and as countries liberalize, as economy matures, usually state bureaucracy loses power. But that's one core aspect of power. There's another aspect of power which talks about how much power do you have to bring forth transformation in the societies that you're leading. So as a civil servant, if you're an IAS officer, if you're an IPS officer, you have enormous power and opportunity. If you are honest, if you really want to bring forth that change in your society. I think you have worked very closely with one of the district collectors in Mandi, and you would realize how much power and authority that official had if he were serious about bringing forth transformation in the district of Mandi. Same is the case across India. If you have the will, if you have the desire, if you want to bring forth law transformation, then civil services will definitely provide you with a lot of opportunities, a lot of good power to bring forth law changes. And great question. I hope this answers your question. And if I were to put the same question in your court, how would you answer it?
Sure, definitely. In that moment, you could drink your Nibu Pani, which you are doing. It's a fantastic answer, especially Naman, the way you have divided between how district magistrates could have power, and then of course leading entrepreneurs and faces like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and of course Elon Musk as well. To my mind, when I think of power, I think power in two phases. One is direct, and then of course there is indirect. When you think of direct, there is power definitely held by polity and by bureaucrats, right? Which is that I make the regulations, I control the mob, I control eventually the policies in this country. As a management consultant and even as a policy consultant before, we largely had a lot of indirect power, which is your ability to influence policies or your ability to actually impact large corporates as well. So if I were to take a step back, I genuinely still think, which is a little counterintuitive answer because I was expecting you to say that government has more power. In a way, you did say that towards the end as well. But to my mind, I think a government officer has more power, and even more than him or her, politics or politicians or polity, whatever you may want to call it, has more power. And the reason why I say so is because of the concept called blockade. I genuinely think that entrepreneurs can't work without government, but governments can still, in some shape or format, can work without entrepreneurs. Why? Because governments can block. Entrepreneurs can't block, right? Entrepreneurs can't say that I am going to go against the government, I'm going to be a revolutionary and I'm going to not accept this policy, right? They do influence policies, they do lobby against policies, but government have that absolute power of saying that, hey, we are going to be a blockade. And because of that 0-1 absolute sense of power, I genuinely believe that politicians at the highest end have power, and then bureaucrats, and then entrepreneurs or private sector management consultant. That's not to say that private sector folks don't have a lot of power. They can influence a lot of policies through, like what you said, control over media, through control over policies or lobbying as well. Once again, I'm speaking from the experiences that I've had in both public and private sector. It's not an absolute answer. And you all are also subject to your opinions. We look forward to hearing your opinions on this particular question. Which brings us towards the second last question, Naman. And once again, a very popular question: who earns more? And not a wrong question, right? When you are in your 20s, you want to create wealth, especially if you're coming from middle class. I've been in that situation. I mean, you and I have had a lot of interesting chats around wealth, concept of wealth, how to create sustainable wealth as well. So for someone who's trying to move from lower middle class to upper middle class or rise in the ranks, who do you think generates more wealth? A government sector employee, and when we say government sector employee, we're talking about the top of the pyramid, IAS officer, IFS and IPS, or rather a private sector consultant, management consultant or product manager. So over to you.
Again, a very interesting question, and thank you so much for asking this question. I think wealth is a component of various parameters. So money is one of those parameters. Freedom would be another of those parameters. Lifestyle could be another parameter. So depending upon the functions that you care for or the components that value most to you, you will define wealth accordingly. From personal standpoint, I don't care about money. I know this is a controversial thing to say, but I don't care about money. I just need money to have decent food and travel to decent locations and have a decent lifestyle. I don't believe in flamboyant lifestyle. So for me, money does not hold that much of relevance. The other component for me would be freedom. How much freedom do I have to, again, do whatever I am thinking or saying? And from that context, unfortunately, civil servants may not have that much of freedom. So there are other aspects of wealth, and it's entirely upon you on how you decide and define those aspects of wealth. For me, I genuinely think if you are getting into the civil services, you have ample money to lead a decent life. Government will take care of most of your necessities. You may not have that much of freedom that a regular civilian might enjoy. But there is always a trade-off in terms of the amount, in terms of the lifestyle that you wish to live. And I always say this, getting into civil services is not a job, it's a lifestyle. And if this lifestyle suits you, the components of earning more or earning more wealth should be irrelevant. If you want to really earn good amount of money, civil services may not be the right profession for you. I would highly advise you to go into management consulting, pivot your job, get into venture capital, go into private equity, launch your own startup. The kind of money that you will earn is going to be exponential. I'm not saying that a McKinsey associate will earn a lot. A McKinsey associate will earn a lot in the beginning, will be equivalent to what a collector will earn in the beginning. But the kind of growth a McKinsey consultant would see as he or she processes and in the career, the amount of money is going to be exponential. So the amount of money the McKinsey associate 10 years down the line will earn is going to be more than a collector might earn during his or her lifetime. So I hope this answers your question. If I were to ask you the same question, what would be your answer?
Sure. Thanks, Naman. I'm largely aligned with you on this particular answer. And if I were to add an anecdote which I picked up during my time with Government of India when I was a Government of India advisor. So I met this joint secretary. I will of course not name his name. And he was also a St. Stephen's College alum. And people know this, a lot of St. Stephen's College alums work in civil services as IAS officers and IFS officers. And in a very short duration of a chat in my short duration of chat with him, he actually told me that if you are ever contemplating, and I was not contemplating, I didn't even ask him this question. He said, don't join civil services. He was, I think, in his mid-40s. And he said that right now I'm earning in lakhs and most of my peers are earning in crores. Now, he could be a pessimist, and it could be fine. I think I would not judge him for being a pessimist. When you're working in the system for so long and the system is taking its sweet time to change, you could become little frustrated with time. So I don't think it takes a rocket science to figure out that in terms of wealth, especially in management consulting, you are going to earn way lot because your salary moves like a hockey stick, as I've always mentioned. It's like a e to the power x rather than y equals to 3 plus 2x, which is linear. Having said this, it's not really a question that you asked me or I asked you, which is that wealth is not the most end of the world, right? So why do you want to go in civil services becomes the number one question. Is it because of power? Is it because of wealth? Or is it because just of work satisfaction, with three things that we have discussed till now? And you decide your why. I have always told you, and most of the people close to me know, I have never prepared for this exam. I've heard horrendous and very sharp stories when people prepare for these exams. So if you're preparing for this exam, know your why very clearly, because if I'm not wrong, Naman, it's going to be a very long journey. And if you're going to be stuck in your room for long period of time, then you need to have your why so that you don't deteriorate on your mental health. Which is also, Naman, a very sweet spot for us to move towards the last question that I had from you, that a lot of people prepare for civil services, and unfortunately, a lot of it is a matter of luck. So many people apply for it. Statistics 1-on-1, the selection ratio is really low, if I'm not wrong, a single digit number, right? Then people who don't really crack through civil services or UPSC, what could be a potential plan B for them? You and I, we have always made sure that we have a plan B. In fact, when I left my job of 1 CR in Dubai, we were talking about what is plan B if our education venture don't flies off, and we are very sure 99% it will not. But what is your perspective first and foremost of having a plan B in life? Is it a good way of thinking? And if you agree, let's say, what could be a good plan B for people who are preparing for UPSC?
I think it's not about plan B or plan C or plan D. You can have millions of plans. It is extremely critical. It's extremely important to be pragmatic and practical in life. So it is a travesty that millions of Indians in their early 20s, they end up revising and doing the same thing over and over again with the same dream and same ambition to be in civil services. There's nothing wrong with it, but if I were to prepare for civil services, I would consider it to be a plan A, and my goal would be to clear plan A, and my goal would be to clear it in the first attempt. If for some reason that does not work out, I would want to pivot somewhere else and channelize those energies in much more productive way than being confined to your rooms in old Rajinder Nagar or Karol Park or via watching on academy videos. Your 20s are the most important, most practical years of your lives, and I don't think it's prudent to take multiple gap years, because it will be a Herculean task for you to convince an MBA program, to convince McKinsey or BCG or a VC firm to hire you with a good understanding of India's geography, polity, history, economy, so on and so forth. It will be very difficult for you to get into these wonderful jobs. The world today has dramatically changed, and there are millions of ways through which you can be part of Foreign Office, not just of India, but of across the countries. You can work with the UN, you can work with the World Bank. There are ample examples of civil servants who have quit civil services to pursue career in those domains. And there are ample examples of folks who failed civil services who end up pursuing careers in those domains. Be it Geeta Gopinathan of the IMF, could be Arvind Subramanian, who was a former chief economic advisor of India. And the list is enormous. So it's important to be pragmatic in life. It's important to be prudent in life. So have a plan A, but if for some reason that does not work out, keep on working on plan B. Twitter, for example, was never supposed to be what it is today. It was supposed to be dating app. Same is the case with Slack. Slack was not supposed to be what it is today. So keep on working hard, keep on grinding. But there's a limit to taking asymmetric bets in life. Take your first attempt, do it marvelously well. If for some reason that does not work out, pivot, and the world will be your oyster. Feel free to reach out to me if you are thinking of appearing for this wonderful exam called Civil Services. I'll be happy to assist you, guide you, and be of any assistance going forward. And at GGI, we have, I honestly believe that there are millions of youngsters who are wonderful people. They are not able to appear for civil services because of the risk associated with this exam. The McKinsey consultants who want to take a deep dive into civil services, they cannot do it because of the opportunity cost involved with the exam. So via Impact Fellowship, our goal is simple, that right people should be occupying important positions in the government. If that can happen, India will transform. India is doing enormously well today, and I'm sure with right people in right positions, things will improve further. So if you're thinking of or contemplating of appearing for civil services, and are thinking that it's a huge bet, GGI Impact Fellowship could be a wonderful source for you to put channels to your energies. And I hope you all explore that fellowship, and you will get an incredible opportunity to meet wonderful people and develop your skill sets that will totally transform many aspects of your 20s. So I wish you all the very best, and thank you so much, Shatakshi, for inviting me and for wonderful work that you're doing via your YouTube journey.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Naman, for that elaborative answer. I largely agree with that. That's our time together with this video on government versus private sector. If you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends so that they get impacted with all the interesting content that I am bringing out on this channel, and especially with the collaboration with Naman Shrivastava. And with that, feel free to, of course, stay happy, stay healthy, and be kind to each other. I'll see you very much soon with my chai break. And if you want to see Naman with his Nibu Pani break, then let us know. I'll see you all soon. Adios. Bye-bye.